Taylor is a part of the Oregon Remembrance Project.
And we're here with Renee Browse.
And we are with Eddie Carrillo.
So we are here with Michael Austin. Michael Austin is with Just Compassion.
This morning with our special guest, Aaron Earlywine. We are talking this morning about immigration.
You know, I think to do this work, you have to have what I call unrelenting hope. And for me, part of that unrelenting hope is this belief that no matter where you go, you can find enough people who are willing to choose justice if given the opportunity.
And this is we end up dehumanizing people.
There is no greater determination of the value of life than the lives we are willing to take.
She said, I know what it's like to be hated. I know what it's like to be looked down upon because of who you are. And so I am here to protect you and to help give you support to know that you are not hated by everyone.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I am grateful that you are here this morning, each and every one of you. And those of you who are joining us online, thanks for being here as well. We are continuing our CRM Community Resilience Model training today, CRIM, with Bethany Flug, right to my right here. Let's welcome Bethany. She's just coming off a trip from Panama, so she's still jet lagged, maybe? A little bit, okay. This is part 2 of the CRIM model, the resilience model, and those of you who have not gone through this before, part 1, I'm going to review part 1 in an initial 20-minute section, and then we're going to go on to part 2. So those of you who were in part 1, this is a great time to review. And if you haven't felt yourself change anything or behavioral patterns of any kind, now's your chance to engage again in part 1, right? So we are covering part 1 and part 2 in a review, and then into part 2 with Bethany. On your tables, there are 2 sheets of paper. The first sheet of paper is very colorful. That's going to be Bethany's walkthrough. The other paper, which is very just black and white, that paper is a evaluation. And what we would like is for you to evaluate us today and walk through the simple questions. It's a rating 1 through 5. And so depending on how you think we do, you can rate us on 1 through 5, 5 being excellent, 1 not being so excellent. And so you can rate us at the end. Please wait till the end. We are going to have discussion questions. And so block 1 and then discussion, block 2, discussion, block 3, discussion. And we have a question already. The purpose of rating us is I am personally, Bethany's already certified in the Community Resilience Trauma Institute. I am working on my certification through the Trauma Institute. So if you would appease them by evaluating me or us, that would be helpful for my certification in this. We desire to do this through Sherwood and beyond and in more communities. And in order to do so, I would like to be certified as well as I join Bethany and her colleagues in some of the things that they're doing in our communities. And so that's the purpose of being evaluated. Yeah. You were just setting me up. Yeah. Right. So we do have some slides. We're going to just start with some slides today, and what we're doing is talking about resilience. And resilience is not grit and toughness. That is not what we're talking about. Resilience is much different. Resilience is almost like, well, it's not pretending to be okay. It's not pretending to be, I'm fine, frustrated, irritated, neurotic, and emotionally disturbed, right? It's not pretending to be fine. It's the ability to connect our brain and body together and to read and interpret what's happening in the body so that we can respond properly, have a proper response, or at least a pause before we respond to ourselves and to others and how we react in conversations. And honestly, being very present in very difficult moments. Now, I would have to say that over the last handful of years, probably 10, COVID, post COVID, election things, politics, division, all the things that we've experienced, economic downfall, upswings, all the things that we've experienced over the last 10 years does cause and has caused people stress. And that's just honest. You know, wherever we are at in our beliefs or our politics, life has been more difficult than other decades in this last decade. And I just have to be honest with that. And most of us have not, many of us have not, but I would say most people have not focused during this last decade on the ability to navigate those things well. We haven't gained necessarily tools on how to navigate stress and toxic stress and conflict and things like that very well. And so over the last year, we as a community have tried to give tools to each other to navigate stress, toxic stress, and conflict and things like that so that we can navigate it well. So resilience does not mean we're not going to struggle. Resilience does not mean that we are just walking through life easy street. We, through resilience, are gaining tools to be able to navigate stress, to navigate difficulty, to navigate struggle with a sense of balance and a sense of self-awareness of how we respond, and then gaining tools to respond better. So think about a river, and this is a good metaphor when it comes to resilience. When you're on a river, those of you who have floated a river or you've been in a boat on the water, sometimes the water gets pretty choppy when it comes to waves in class 5 rapids, class 4 rapids, you know, maybe some rapid ratings, right? When you're in class 5, you are having that moment of I'm hanging on for dear life, right? Class 0 is glass. So we're just kind of coasting, and maybe that's even a dry zone where we're trying to paddle ourselves through class 0, that's glass. So if you think about a river, a healthy river honestly is never still. A healthy river moves forward. So we are always, as people, moving. We're always doing things, thinking, developing, navigating through life. We're always moving. And so in a healthy river is always moving. But sometimes those rapids get pretty high. Sometimes those rapids, you are dragging bottom on rocks, right? And so with resilience, being in resilience means you're staying in the boat. You're in the boat. You're able to paddle, you're able to move forward, and you're able to navigate the highs and the lows, right? So if you go to that next slide, the resilience zone is that very thing where you are in the boat. You are not tossed out of the boat because you're on the Colorado River and you've gotten bounced out of the boat, right? And you're not carrying your boat on the shoreline because it's bottomed out in too many rocks. We might have all have done that when we were kayaking or canoeing or whatever we've done in our life, right? And so the resilience zone is living in flexibility, living in balance, living in awareness so that we can navigate some of the struggles and some of the overstimulated things in life. So notice that that line is in a sine wave. It's not in a flat wave. And so it's not, life is not flat. We're not calm all the time. We're not happy all the time. We're not elated all the time. We're not depressed all the time, right? And so life, that's not reality. Life is ups and downs. And so stress, disappointment, frustration, excitement, joy, elation. I just performed a wedding yesterday. And in that wedding, everyone was excited. Everyone was cheering. Everyone was smiling. But I bet in that room, someone was down in the dumps, right? Because they were watching all the excitement and they have never experienced that excitement or haven't experienced it for a long time. So in a room, the reality is that there's many people that are engaged and there's many people disengaged as well, and that's just life. So the goal in life is not emotional perfection. The goal in life is not just the flat line. The goal in life is not just, hey, I just have the joy of the Lord and I'm just going to walk around with the joy of the Lord and that's all I live, right? Some people speak that way, and I don't think that's a reality, really. Some people just have the power of positive thinking, which I do think that there's power in gratitude and positive thinking. But also that's not a reality, is just walking around with positive thinking, because we do have negative thinking. And many times negative thinking is powerful for change. And so we need to consider that. So resilience is our ability to experience life's ups and downs and being in that zone, facing people and challenge effectively. And that's what the resilience model is about, is staying in that zone. So I do love this image of the kayaker. The kayaker is in the river, upright, navigating well, able to move forward, right? Life is moving, responsibilities, relationships are moving forward. Work, you got to get up at 7 a.m. to get to work by 8, to work your 9 to 5 or whatever it is, right? The goal is to live upright, to stay upright, not easy life, but challenging life and staying within the boat. As the river flows, you are staying connected and you are upright. Now, if you go to the next slide, you'll see this window of tolerance. So I just want to ask the question, as you understand this metaphor and this image of the resilient zone, what causes you to go too high? And what causes you to go too low? What are the things in your life that get you outside of that window? Just think about that for a moment. What are the things that create the spike? It could be the person sitting right next to you today. Could be. Now, we use this term trauma a little loosely in society. I do believe that we have real trauma, and real trauma is this. Real trauma is an event or a series of events over a long period of time, or one event over, an event that creates a difference or changes our neural pathways in our brain, which changes our nervous system. Okay. So some people call things PTSD, that emotional or that neural pathway physiological change, PTSD, post traumatic stress syndrome or disorder. And PTSD is the emotional physiological response to an event or a series of long-term events that are the same, that changes our nervous system. We'll call that big T, right? Big T trauma changes our body. So if you've ever gone through any kind of trauma, name it, right? It could be an abusive situation, or it could be a car accident, right? Car accidents can change our nervous system if they're violent enough, right? Or we're witnessing something over and over and over again. People have PTSD from loud noises over a long period of time, especially in combat zones, or they're in like an industrial setting where noises are going on all the time, and that changes our nervous system. So psychologically, we can change our nervous system through outside influence and also internal dialogue. So when our brains don't stop at observation, our brains observe and interpret. And so when we interpret, we create a narrative. And so when you're looking at two cars and one is cleaner than the other, right? You look at the cars and say let's say they're both black cars, because black cars get dirty easy, right? So both are look dirty easier, right? So you have two black cars in front of you. One is clean and one is dirty, right? And you go, "Wow, those are two black cars. That one looks a lot nicer." Your brain automatically interprets the black car looks nicer. It could be a junker, but it looks nicer because this one is dirty. Your brain interprets that. That creates a narrative inside your brain. That narrative could be false. That narrative could be a lie. That narrative could be true. That narrative could be a reality. Let's say the clean car is a 1977 Ford Pinto. Did they make those in black, Rich? I think so. Gas can, gas tank in the back. You remember, right? But the dirty car is a 2026 Ferrari that just is muddy, right? Our interpretive brain looks at this. Let's say this Pinto is choice, been remodeled, off the pan remodeling, right? It's just been redone, right? Perfect. If this was just a little cleaner, it would look better and it would be better, right? But because it's dirty, our brain interprets this as this is better. That happens all the time. Dumb example, simple example, but that's to give us that just meta or that image inside our brain of that is how our brain works. We look at two things and we make a judgment call. We create a narrative inside of our brains that can pull us out of resilience. The lies that we tell ourselves pulls us out of the resilience. Man cold. I get sick and I get a man cold. Does everyone know what a man cold is? A man cold is when I have a head cold and I'm dying, right? So I am take me to the hospital, I'm dying. That's a man cold, right? Women colds are I have pneumonia and I'm still doing life and going to work, right? But a man cold is I have the sniffles and I'm dying, right? So when we get sick, our brain observes and interprets a false reality. That can pull us out of resilience. The narratives that we tell ourselves and the interpretation we tell ourselves, and then the narratives can keep us in resilience. This is why gratitude, positive thinking actually works because they reframe and retell those narratives back into resilience. So does everyone understand that? You're getting that so far. Okay. So the river keeps flowing, we keep moving, but yet what we think, what we feel, what we're trying to solve, the decisions that we're making can keep us connected or non-connected, creating little traumas or big traumas, right? Where the narratives that we speak push us too high or push us too low. In this, we get stuck in some of these zones. So the high zone can look like anxiety. The high zone can look like irritability, constant, like continual irritability. Racing thoughts, our remunerating mind. We get stuck in our remunerating. Is there another slide there? There we go. This is the remunerating mind. The racing thoughts, panic, anger. Like, I understand that there's proper, well-placed anger. Like I'm angry at certain things that are happening in the world today, right? But I'm not screaming at a person across the table because I'm angry at the things that are happening in the world today. So there's well-placed anger, but then there's unregulated anger, right? Or the anger is something didn't happen at home, like somebody left, jam toast out and the ants, crawl on the counter, and I'm flipping my lid because there's a few ants on the counter, and these are real stories. The few ants on the counter, and I'm just flipped out because something happens. And that's me, right? So that's a unregulated anger. Restlessness can be an unregulated zone where we're just under anxiety, that restlessness. So what is happening is our body is actually trying to protect us. The fight, flight, freeze, or fawn mentality that we have, that system in our life, in our brain. It's like sometimes the gas pedal gets stuck or the brake pedal gets stuck, right? Our bodies are actually trying to protect us, and it does cause us to go too high and does cause us to go too low. You cannot and we cannot live a functioning, thriving life in a high zone or a low zone. We don't. And if we think we are, then that's a false reality. That's a lie that we're telling ourselves, that, I'll sleep when I'm dead type of thing. That mentality that you're going to die sooner than later. We can't live in that kind of zone. So the body is trying to protect us. Sometimes we don't realize that we are in the highs and the low zones, and we need our community. Bethany's going to talk about community self-care, where we need people to speak into our lives. Hey, you're just unregulated. Can I help you? And body double with that person and help them to regulate. And so you know what it feels like to be in highs and low zones. You know what that feels like, but sometimes it's very difficult to recognize those and when we're actually in those zones. Low zone is fatigue, depression, numbness, brain fog, being too isolated, reclusive, not wanting to be around people, feeling disconnected. Imagine that river just being completely dry and now you're carrying your boat. Boats were not meant to be carried on the shore, and neither were you, right? And so that's the nervous system saying, I can't fight this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And we have that give up when we begin to shut down. And sometimes we lay down, literally physically lay down, and can't get out of bed. So our brains are incredibly adaptive, and your brain mechanism. So you've heard of like the prefrontal cortex, right? That's like your thinking brain. That's where the executive function is happening. And if you struggle with executive function, decision making, large motor decision making, that's pretty evident, right? The house is a disaster. I don't keep a calendar. I can't figure out how to schedule my life out. I don't keep appointments very well. I forget a lot, right? Some of those things are very executive function where, I can pinpoint I'm supposed to show up at 9, but for some reason I just can't, right? That's an executive function, brain function, right? An executive brain function. But our brains are highly adaptive. They are they call it the adaptive brain, where different functions of our brain are working together simultaneously, emotionally, cognitively, intrinsically, like tacit knowledge. Do you know what tacit knowledge is? Where you know that you don't have to get burned by the hot plate or the burner to know that that's hot. You don't need to stick your hand in the fire to know that you're going to get scorched, right? That's like tacit knowledge. When there's a big mountain lion in front of you, that's a threat. It's not a kitty, right? And so so that's a tacit knowledge that a bear can maul you. You don't have to read stories or watch videos or look at video YouTube to figure out that a large cat like a mountain lion is going to attack. That's a tacit knowledge. It's kind of inside of us, right? innate knowledge. And so in innate knowledge, your brain, emotional brain, cognitive brain, tacit brain are all working together to do this. Tastes good, doesn't it? Right? So that all work together to help me to drink that cup of coffee, to know that that tastes really nice. And that's going to taste really nice. That's my interpretive brain. It's my observation brain. That's my tacit brain, emotional brain, the whole bit. So you have neural networks that are working together, designed to keep us alive, right? This keeps us alive. I'm hungry, therefore I eat. I need to move, I need to get out of the way, therefore I don't get hurt. So the survival side of our brain actually is like that reactive brain, right? It's our reactive side. But we do have some other portions of our brain. If you go to that next slide, you know, other portions of our brain, and these, you know, look back in your sophomore high school biology class, right? Where we have the amygdala and the cortex working together in the emotional and thinking side of life, right? Think about these two players on a team, right? And my emotions tell me that I want to punch that guy, but then I don't punch that guy, right? Because my cortex comes into play and says, that has some consequences to it, right? If I punch that guy because my emotions tell me to punch that guy, I know that I go to jail and I'm going to get punched, right? And so we have maybe some impulse control going on, and the amygdala says, okay, I'm actually safe. I don't need to punch that guy, right? So that's what the amygdala tells us. The cortex tells us what's actually happening, and those two things work together. So we need to learn from our emotions. We need to learn from our interpretive brain, the narratives we tell ourselves, sometimes the lies and the truths that are going on from those interpretations. Those narratives can be true or not true. If we would learn our emotions effectively, we would learn to respond very well and relationally build and learn to love one another and actually speak in a way that shows kindness and loving our neighbor. I mean, we would actually, if we would learn our emotional selves, we would be able to respond to life a little bit more healthily. And so when we're regulated and thinking, developing relationships, we're physically healthy, we have behavioral health and mental health as well. We enter into more of a gratitude. We enter into more of a compassion. We enter into more of like courage and connection and hope versus toxic stress. When we're living in toxic stress, you can advance these slides. When we're living in toxic stress, what that causes is the fear, the isolation, the low zone, the withdrawal, the shame, all of these things. And I can give you those slides later. But these characteristics are not, if you feel isolated, fearful, under anxiety, some people think that those are flaws. Well, you have a character flaw because, you know, you're an introvert, right? And you don't like people. That's actually not a character flaw. That's an emotional response. Our nervous system saying stop. Because if I enter into that a little bit too far, then I'm going to get emotionally dysregulated, and you don't want to see that in me, right? I'm going to start reacting. So we do have levels of stress. Not all stress is bad, but those levels of stress are different for everybody. So what I consider maybe toxic to me, that might be lower for you. It might be, you might hit that threshold a little bit faster, or you might have a little bit more resilience than I do. And so you're going to hit that stress level a little bit farther, right? So not all stress is bad. Positive stress actually helps us to grow and function. Your body cannot function without stress. You will die without stress. Why? Because the cell needs stress to survive. Cortisol is a hormone inside of our body, biologically, that is an important hormone that keeps us alive. There's, you get on YouTube and you start doom scrolling and you'll see cortisol is bad, cortisol is bad, cortisol is bad. Too much cortisol is bad, right? So levels of stress actually keep us alive. So learning new skills, what we're doing, I'm under a little bit of stress right here, right? I'm trying to present something and I'm able to present because my stress level is up, right? And I'm actually able to give a presentation. Starting a new job and keeping up on your toes, that's all good stress, right? But if you find yourself ill, right? If you find yourself that you have lost major losses in your life, right? Or too many life transitions. This is why counselors will tell you in a marriage or a relationship with your partner, if you go through too many life transitions all at once, you'll end up separated because you can't keep that level of stress. So if you lose a house and then get disenfranchised from a child and then lose a job, all like in the same 6 months, the chance of you actually having a functional relationship is pretty slim, right? So this is why maybe, stressful children or stressful like life events or stressful jobs can have a direct impact on relationships. So I would say that in our levels of stress, we need to identify in ourselves what causes stress in us? What are actually stressors? Amanda's very good. My wife, Amanda, is very good at navigating stress. And I can see her navigating lots of different stresses and staying regulated in the things that I'm not regulated in. Right. But then all of a sudden, something will stress her out. And then I see that part. Right. And I go, wow, that actually is. So she's recognized this stresses me out. And then she'll tell me, this stresses me out, right? So that's pretty self-aware. Me, on the other hand, right? Sometimes my man cold comes into play. Sometimes I am dysregulated and I don't know why. I can't tell you this stresses me out. And I'm dysregulated in whatever's happening. And it could be spilt milk. I mean, literally, it could be as small as spilt milk. And this is stressing me out, but I don't know why, because my brain is telling me it's only spilt milk, but I'm not regulated in the spilt milk. And I can't find that. So it's very important that we identify stressors, because in order to enter into regulation, we need to also identify what stresses us and what causes toxicity in us, right? Otherwise, we're kind of lost in our emotions. So Crim teaches 3 pathways. And the 3 pathways of regulation is part of thinking, a part of sensing, and a part of feeling. And they call that tracking, resourcing, and grounding. Tracking is, and it's not analyzing, it's not fixing, it's noticing. So when in your body, you notice where you carry stress. And I don't know if you've ever done this before, but some of us carry stress in our backs and our necks. Some of us carry stress on the right side or the left side of our necks. Some people get head. Everyone's rubbing their neck right now. It's funny. They're like, so when we track, I saw you all. When we track, we're noticing what's happening in the body, right? We're noticing and feeling what's happening and noticing, okay, warmth in our hands. If I do this, everyone kind of do this, rub your hands together, right? When you rub your hands together, now lift them apart. Lift them, there you go. You feel that tingle and that warmth, right? You're tracking. That's a sense of tracking. That's one way to just simply track what's going on in our body. So notice your feet on the floor, right? Is there a sensation? I clench my jaw. And I don't know if you do that, but I hold my jaw. And after a while, when I'm under stress, and then I go, oh man, And I'm like opening my mouth at that point. I'm tracking. I'm trying to notice what's happening. Um, some people carry it in their shoulders and in their upper backs, right? And so, oh man, and we kind of do this and we can feel that stress in our body. And so we need to learn to listen, notice in the body where we carry our stress, just notice it, not doing anything with it, just where is it? Because physically we carry stress. And this is why stress can create long term health challenges because it starts affecting our organs in our body because we're carrying so much stress. The next skill is called resourcing. And when we track and we say, okay, wow, I am not feeling good, something's going on in me, I can't quite figure out what the stress is, but I know that I am carrying it. My jaw's clenched, I hurt in my back. Maybe, maybe some people get neuropathy from stress. And so your hands go numb, right? And maybe it's your left hand goes numb under stress. Uh, a resource can help your system, your nervous system feel supported. And this is where maybe our thinking brain comes into play. And a resource could be a person, a resource could be an idea, a place, a pet. This is why support animals sometimes are really important. It could be our faith and music. It could be a thought, a memory. It could be a natural like experience, nature experience. It could be an experience of any kind. And for me, I find resources, I'll just give you an example in the things that I've done that are meaningful. Sometimes when I lose my meaning and I've lost my way, and did I do a good job? I don't know if I did a good job, right? So yesterday, I hope they don't listen to this. Yesterday, I'm performing the wedding. The sound guy is messed up. He's not doing his job. He's interrupting me while I'm performing the ceremony. I've never had that happen before in my life. So by the time I was done, I felt foolish, right? I mean, here I've literally performed 350 some odd weddings in my life, right? And I've never had the sound guy interrupt me like 3 times. I've never had him address the crowd. Here he is in dumpy basketball shorts and a t-shirt off in the corner, and everyone's dressed to the nines up front, and I got the sound guy like telling me what to do from the back. And I'm like, dude, I'm not there yet. It's in the notes. Don't worry. We're going to get there in about 20 seconds. Can you just chill, right? So I've never had that happen to me before. I get down from the stage and I'm like, okay, roll with the punches, no big deal. We'll just move on, enjoy the time. And then this person is super angry that it happened, right? So then I start to like feel certain things inside. I'm like, wow, this was a really expensive wedding, like 30 grand style expensive wedding. And I'm like, wow, this is just like, did I do a good job? And then I had to think through and think about a resource and the meaningful work that I've done before. I've had to do that. So maybe that's that for you too. Maybe when you feel like fired in life, right? Or whatever the feeling is, just got fired internally, fired myself. Maybe it's a resource of something that you can think about. Think about that right now. What is it for you that's a good resource? It could be a memory. It could be, I've done this 350 times. I probably did a pretty okay job, right? Even with the interruptions. So that's a resource for me. What is that? What is that for you? Um, it helps bring awareness. It helps bring us back to ourselves and say, okay, we're in this for the long game, not the short game, right? So then the third resource, and I'm going to end with this, is grounding. And grounding is a contact. So this is an actual physical contact. Give me a high five. Okay. So that's a physical contact. A physical contact is simple, but it's a powerful skill, right? So grounding exercise, actually give me a high five. right? That is a physical contact that I have, a physical sensation that, you know what, when we high five each other, feels good, right? And then when two people are standing there and they do the cupping high five and they try to make the loudest noise possible, that hurts. But when you're doing a high five and you're just good gaming each other, it's sometimes one of the most powerful skills that we have, right? Of encouragement and needing encouragement. So what is a self-grounding? A self-grounding could be laying on the floor. It could be touching the ground. It could be patting yourself on the back, right? It could be noticing and shifting. Bethany's going to talk about this in a minute, but it's maybe, my butt hurts, so I'm going to move my butt on the chair, right? It could be gravity, like something gravity. This is why in sports, when you were in high school, the coach would tell you to go wall sit. When you're bouncing around and not being able to regulate, and you were that kid, right, that was running around, go do a wall sit for a minute, and you just sit there on the wall. Ooh, that's a grounding exercise, right? There's a lot of yoga that's grounding exercises. Lots of yoga practices that are grounding exercise. So grounding helps our nervous system say this: I'm here, I'm present, and I'm supported, right? And so this is why grounding is probably less tapped into what you're actually doing and more tapped into what you're sensing from what you're doing, right? And so the pressure, so weighted blankets. And this is really important for people who are on the spectrum. There's been studies of people who are on the spectrum, level 1 spectrum especially, where simple things become very important grounding exercises. Fidget spinners, weighted blankets, things that are being squeezed, things that are being fidgeted with, stemming. They call it stemming, where I stem. I do this with my feet, right? And I roll my feet back and forth. It drives my kids nuts, right? That's grounding, just doing something physical to bring ourselves back to ourselves. So let's take a break. I went for a very long time. Let's take a break. That was part 1. Bethany's going to go part 2. And let's do some of our questions. I have 5 questions. More than welcome to do all 5 and race through them. More than welcome to do 1. More than welcome to make up your own. So let's go ahead and take 6 minutes and do that. Hey, let's bring our thoughts to a close and back up to the front as we continue on now part 2 of the community resilience model. And I'm going to turn it over to Bethany. She is a professor, those of you who don't know, at George Fox University. And she teaches in the Masters of Teaching program. She has her own cohorts that she leads in that. So she produces teachers, which is quite cool. Actually, it's fun. Yeah. And she has incorporated CRIM into her program and mostly into teaching teachers CRIM. So go ahead and take it.
Thanks, Kevin. All right. Well, yeah, thanks for that great introduction and great work recapping and reviewing the first 3 skills, Kevin, and some of those concepts. If you want to pull, oh, I'll wait. I'm going to go through the 3 other skills of CRIM. And so Kevin covered tracking, resourcing, and grounding. And on your table, you have a printed out slideshow. It's the colorful page. One thing I want us to practice, because for this kind of time, we have a little more time set aside that since we're, ideally learning 3 new skills, you're going to have some opportunities to practice these skills. And so one thing with CRIM is that when you are, the first skill Kevin talked about was tracking, right? And that's noticing and paying attention to what's happening in your body. It's noticing as well and paying attention to the pleasant and neutral sensations in your body. So one thing I love about these words in front of you, sensation words, it's kind of a little bit of a different language, right? We, as people, I feel like especially, there's been a lot of work done around, we think of like social emotional learning, utilizing feeling words, right? We talk about like, I feel this, and we can use I statements, and we have this language, but when it comes to sensation words and understanding the sensations of our bodies and becoming body literate, right? It's a different skill. And that's that tracking piece. And so when you are practicing tracking with the CRIM skills, or even with any skill, and we'll get to this in a moment, because we all may have practices and things we do, but when you add tracking to it, right, it enhances and widens your resilient zone. And so we use sensation words in order to read our body, right? We might notice loosening of muscles, right? Tightening of your facial muscles, right? When you smile, it can be a very pleasant sensation, right? Sometimes though, it's a pleasant sensation to have pressure on your hands, as Kevin was talking about, the studies they're doing with weighted blankets, right? We're going to get to one option for grounding, but it's a different skill. If you like push against a wall, right? That pressure, whether it's the coolness of the wall, the pressure in your hands, right? Sometimes it's the warmth in your hands. Noticing the pressure in your arms, your muscles tightening, that can be pleasant. And so it's focusing on this pleasant and neutral sensation. So I'm going to go over the next 3 skills. They're a little out of order. It's one of those things that in CRIM, if you're going to give people the skills, they recommend the first 3. But if you can tag on the 5th one, which we'll go to next, it's called Help Now. They recommend doing that in one session. And so I'm going to do the 5th skill first, and then we'll go to the 4 and 6. It's a little backwards. And so skill number 5 is called Help Now. So these skills are meant to be done quickly. Like when you are in a moment and you are noticing, right? Maybe you're sitting in a meeting. I don't know about you. This happens in my life. You're sitting in a virtual meeting and someone is sharing something and you're realizing, oh, that's falling on me. Oh, shoot. That is my responsibility. Okay. I start noticing my heart rate pick up. I might be taking shallower breaths. My muscles might start climbing on up to my ears because that's where I hold my tension. And so these skills, the Help Now skills, are skills to support you in a moment. 10 seconds, 30 seconds. When I talk to my future teachers as well as current teachers about these skills, sometimes we talk about them of this is something you can do as you're literally walking across a classroom and you're going to go address Shreya's behavior. Thanks, Shreya. Right? But it's something, I'm like, who can I pick on? Shreya. But these are skills that can be done very quickly to support yourself. And it's one of those that you might notice that all you do is just you notice that you take a deeper breath. you notice your muscles relax, right? You notice a smile on your face. You notice the coolness of the door, the metal of the door, right? And so again, you can do these skills whether you are actually in your zone or you are noticing that you're higher in your zone, or maybe you're noticing you're a little lower in your zone. Again, sometimes if you're in a meeting and maybe someone has been talking for a long time and you're like, oh, getting kind of tired, I'm going to quickly do a skill. And so we want to move to the next slide. There are lots of different options for skills out there. Krim has just identified these because it kind of touches on multiple ways that many of us may choose to regulate. And so if you are a sensory person, right? Because we also kind of all have things that we lean towards. I say this because myself, I'm very like sensory physical. Push against a wall, notice my steps when I'm walking, the pressure on the ground. Wow. Oh, my heart rate just slowed down. I just took a deep breath. My muscles loosened. Okay. That is tracking with Help Now. I just am a little bit more in my zone, right? Maybe I notice myself getting out of my zone. Cold water on my hands, going outside. If it's super warm in a space and I can just take a moment to step outside and it's cool, just to notice the coolness of the air around me, right? Again, I notice a deep breath. I notice my muscles loosening. I'm gonna take a deep breath right now because that just felt really good. And so some people I've noticed are very drawn to colors, right? And so I've done this as well in a meeting, good times. If you're in a space and you're like, okay, I need a moment and I'm going to start looking for the colors of the rainbow. But it's amazing if you're going, oh, there's red, there's orange, there's yellow, there's green, there's blue, there's purple. And I just take a deep breath, right? And then noticing that deep breath, right, gets you back in your resilience zone just a little bit more. Sometimes people like to notice something of the same color. If you have a window to an outside space, and you can also look at that. I have a good friend that she and her children, they do a lot with colors and counting. And so whether then they do counting of like, let's see how many green things we notice, right? And then the moment their kid takes a deep breath, they go, oh, that was a really deep breath. How did that feel? And they're like, oh, that felt good, right? Bless you. And so everyone is different in their needs. One thing that's also super handy and helpful, if you are cold or warm, noticing when you take a sip of a hot beverage and you notice that sensation as it goes in your body. Or sometimes it's something really cold and you notice the coolness as it goes in. It's not here, but I also, I have had friends who they love to carry with them like sour candy, because for themselves, they notice that if they are starting to, whether it's shallower breaths, right, tension in their body in some places, and if they start noticing that and they can track that, and then they go, I'm gonna have, like, I can have this sour piece of candy and it's going to disrupt the behavior in themselves, right? It's gonna disrupt it. Yeah. And so that shock, though, kind of whoop, brings you back. And so, what I'd like us to do, and it's just going to take a moment, is it's an invitation only. So, if you're like, no, I'm not going to do this, that's fine too. But at your table, or if you want to stand up for a moment, we're literally just going to take like 40 seconds. And I invite you to practice one of these Help Now skills. So, if you want to take a moment to stand up and just track your feet, notice the pressure. If you want to, yeah, go for it. If you want to go push against a wall, if you want to grab a hot beverage, invitation to practice the Help Now skill. Go. Do it too. All right. And once you've had an opportunity to practice, I invite you to come back to your chairs. Yeah. And I would love, again, invitation only, but would anyone care to share the pleasant and neutral sensations you noticed when practicing this skill? And if you'd like to use the language on the paper in front of you for sensation words, right? Think of warmth in hands, pressure, loosening of muscles, deeper breath, slower heart rate. That was a nice deep breath over there. Yeah, laughter. It's wonderful. Yeah. That is a sensation. Yeah, what's so great about that? It's like laughter, yawning, sometimes crying. These are some things that do like support and reset our nervous system, right? One thing I also highly recommend. Oftentimes, I feel like too in society when we like start crying, people, whether it's like a buck up, stop crying kind of a thing. But actually, if you take a moment, it's a fun kind of shift of it, and you notice the sensations while whether you're crying or let's say you have a 5-year-old who's crying about something. I don't have experience with that. Um, but as you have that, but if you ask them, whether it's yourself or someone else, to notice what is that tear? What is the sensation of the tear on your face? Is it warm? Is it cool? Right? So you can also take that moment and even heighten it when it comes to bringing yourself back to your resilient zone. As one, not only, right, crying can be a release and reset in and of itself, but noticing what those sensations are while you are doing that, maybe after you calm down a little, but that can also be very helpful. So, but laughter is also a really great. I don't know if you noticed me up here, I was starting to shiver and then I yawned. So yawning is also a nervous system reset. Again, there have been times too that I've been under anxiety. I'm starting to worry about the future or things that were coming up. And all of a sudden my body is just yawning. I was yawning and like consistently yawning. And I'm like, what is going on? And then it clicked for me and I'm like, oh, I am not in the present moment. I am worried about the future. So I did a skill. I also really love touch. And so I have probably my counter because it's nice and cool. Put my hand on it. I noticed the smoothness of the counter. It was cool. I took a deeper breath, right? Got back in my zone. So any other, sensations that you noticed while practicing a Help Now skill? Yeah, thank you. Loosening muscles, coolness of air. I'm also, yeah. Yeah, good job shifting though, right? Sometimes, yeah. Awesome. Thank you. All right, let's move on to the next. One thing I want to always kind of do, oftentimes many of us in our lives, we not only have ourselves, we might have other people in our lives that we're supporting in different ways. And so you're going to find with even Help Now, right? How can you use this not only for yourself, right? Because definitely, like kind of like when you're in an airplane, if you need oxygen, you put your mask on first and then you help the person next to you, right? And so what does it look like though to potentially you're working with a colleague, it's your friend, it's your partner, right? Someone that maybe you notice that someone is getting agitated. Maybe they're getting higher in their zone, they're getting lower in their zone. These are some ways that you could quickly go, hey, let's go for a walk. You want to go for a walk with me? And then as you're walking, going, oh, that was a nice deep breath, right? And it's amazing, right? We could talk about mirror neurons a different time, right? But how we also impact other people. And so calm people, right? That's Bruce Perry saying. But also another one is a dysregulated nervous system cannot regulate a dysregulated nervous system. So again, think of that oxygen mask for yourself before you put it on someone else. So that's Help Now. That was skill 5. Want to move to next one, Jake? The next skill is one that I find to be so much fun. So the co-founder of CRIM, of the Trauma Resource Institute, her name is Elaine. And so when she talks about gesturing and spontaneous movements, she's done trainings all over the world. Like, she's just a phenomenal person. But one thing that I love is that she'll talk about how so many different, whether it's faiths, people groups, cultures, we all as people do certain gestures for certain things, right? Oftentimes prayer, like a hands of prayer, right? That could be a gesture. Yeah, thank you. And so one thing I love about this is it's a movement, right? We all do movements, whether we are fully aware of them or not. I know Kevin mentioned stimming. And so one thing I know with gesturing is that if you know you have a stim, for example, if you add tracking to that, that can just add an extra layer of supporting your nervous system. Because stimming is something that someone does to soothe, regulate, especially in oversensory. Oftentimes it's associated with someone who is neurodivergent, right? But if you add tracking to that, right, that just gets you in like a little wider in your zone. You're already trying to regulate, right? But if you have the ability and the awareness to go, oh, I am trying to soothe myself right now, I am going to add tracking, right? That can just add an extra layer of support. But oftentimes gesturing, right, it's something that is below the conscious level. I say this, I was in a meeting with a colleague and her sister virtually, and all of a sudden, one of them is like pulling on her hair, right? We're chatting, we're talking about some things. And then, because they're sisters, it was fantastic, the other one starts to do the same thing. And I'm just sitting there, they also both know CRIM, and I'll go, are you self-soothing right now? Like, are you starting to feel a little anxious? Right? And one of them, she's like, yeah, I guess I am. I was starting to get worried about all the things we have to do. And then she stopped and saw the other image of her sister doing the exact same thing. I'm like, you guys have the same self-soothing gesture. And it was putting their hands to their hair, right? As a tool to support, self-soothe, right? Regulate your body. And so sometimes it might be shaking the leg, right? We all do things also under the conscious level, which is always fun. But we also have them for different reasons. I want to move to the next slide, Jake. Actually, we'll go to the next one. Okay. Because they can be self-soothing. It can be something you do when you're feeling strong. It can be something you do when you're feeling joy. It can be something you do when, like, right before you need like courage, right? And so everyone does something differently. One thing I do, which I think is really funny, but I'm pretty sure I've adopted it because of being in virtual world. When I get excited, you can tease me, it's fine. When I get excited, especially because again, my life is so much virtual, I'll go, yeah! Thanks. Right? But part of that is because so much of my world is virtual, right? So when I'm communicating and talking with people, like talking to my students, but it's a gesture of joy, right? And we all have gestures of joy. Well, when you take a moment and add tracking to it, again, that can just help widen your ability to learn. It can bring you back to your ability to learn, right? It can support your nervous system. And so one thing that's also really fun is if you have someone who's really close to you and they go, oh, you do this. We just did this training with a local organization and they're all colleagues. And when I mentioned this gesturing piece, they all turned to one of their supervisors and they're like, you do this. It was so funny, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, I do. When I know I need to be self-soothed, I do blank, right? So I'd like to, another invitation, whether this be something you already know you do, whether it's a self-soothing gesture, a gesture of joy, right? Maybe it's a gesture you notice you do for strength. I'm actually doing one right now, personally. Thanks. I put my hand over my chest, but then I notice that I take a deep breath, right? And so I add tracking to it. Okay, back in the middle of my zone. So I'd like invitation to take a moment at your table groups. If you can automatically think of a gesture that you do to self-soothe, for joy, for comfort, for strength, share, practice, add tracking, and let me know what sensations you notice. Go.
So what do you do if that just creates anxiety in another person? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I guess the gesturing of like if I did something okay, like, and then you went, yay, and you like gotta go, like what I wouldn't, but right. I don't know. Like I just wonder, like I don't really respond that way. I mean, sometimes people do things that are irritating to me, um, or like Shreya's knitting when I was speaking used to bother me a lot because it was so like visually distracting to me, that it was causing. Oh, Bill.
All right. If I could bring our attention back up here.
Have questions after this?
All right. If I could have your attention back up here. Yeah. Yes. Uh huh.
No, no, no. Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's what we were wondering. Or it's what? Gesturing. Gesture. Okay. Yeah. We wanted to put a name on it. We didn't know. Skipping is. That's why, like a six syndrome, like your body is doing something because you're self-soothing, but you're actually not. Right. You're not really.
And I can bring that up. Well, yeah. So I'll speak to that too. One thing, a great question was asked. And something that when it comes to like stimming typically, in my understanding, I am not neurodivergent, and so as well, if someone else would like to speak up in the space, but stimming is more of an below the conscious level, not a controllable. Some might be, but most are not. Way of self-soothing, right? And so it's something that someone who is neurodivergent may tend to do to support their nervous system when they're overstimulated, trying to bring themselves back. But again, it's more of an below the conscious level, not controlled movement. And again,
I add one more
yeah,
thing.
please do.
Stimming is also a auto grounding. So your body is actually using a movement to ground itself. So in our parasympathetic, sympathetic nervous system, how that interplays with one another, your body will automatically do things in its fight, flight, freeze, fawn mentality, right? Moving between those. So it could be something very simple. Like I said, that my feet go like this, right? That's unconscious for me. Somebody might do their thumbs, that might be unconscious. Uh, but if somebody's actually physically doing something more consciously, that would be gesturing.
Well, and so gesturing though is also below the conscious level, but that doesn't necessarily make it stimming. Yeah. 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 Masking. There you go. Yeah. So I also to clarify, it is definitely more complex than we also have had time to get into. Yeah. But it is more complex than that. So when it comes to the gesturing, you can utilize the skill of gesturing when stimming, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that a gesture directly is a stim, right? Those do not equate. Is not always equal to. Thinking of math there. But one thing I know I recognize for myself personally, like again, I'm touching my ring, but it's something that I have learned to do as well. Again, my world is virtual. And so if I'm starting to notice, one way I can start noticing I'm starting maybe to become heightened in my zone is all of a sudden I realize, oh, I am playing with my ring, right? I'm like, oh, this is a self soothing gesture. Let's take a moment, Beth, right? Um, so great question, though. Yeah. 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 Well, definitely. I mean, one of them, even up here, right? You see conversational gesturing. One of the things, again, kind of going back to conversational help now, but sometimes it is having someone around you go, hey, do you notice that you put your hands through your hair, right? When you start getting nervous. Sorry, I'm going to fix my hair. Um, or you start doing blank. You tap, you have a pen in your hand and you start tapping the table, right? That repetitive movement. So sometimes it is asking the people around you and going, hey, what do you think? Um, so, yeah. Okay. So the practice of grounding, right? If I go back to that, the practice of grounding is an intentional practice that you can do. You're sitting, you can be laying down, you can be leaning against a wall, and it is noticing the sensation of your body touching and being supported by a surface. That is grounding. And so I personally, many of you know I'm a runner. Every time I go on a run, I do a grounding practice for like a minute. I just notice my feet hitting the pavement, and that is grounding. And so the exercise itself, when you think of the difference between like a help now is like 10, 20 seconds, right? When you do a resourcing activity, when you do a grounding activity, even potentially gesturing activity like this, you can do that's more maybe like a minute or two of a practice. And so grounding, right, is when you are noticing the sensation, your body is making contact with a supportive surface. You can also ground in water. Some people who love swimming, you can ground in water. That's not me. That's okay. Um, but when it comes to gesturing, right, this is something that we tend to do. It can be unconscious, it can be conscious, right? Again, I think of my friend as she's touching her hair and wasn't realizing it, but she was self soothing, right? Sometimes you might be rubbing your hands together, self soothing. But when you can bring attention to that and go, ooh, that is pleasant. The pressure is pleasant. The coolness is pleasant, right? That adds tracking. That just supports your nervous system, right? Brings you back into your balance a little bit more. Yeah. Yeah. So, so thank you for that question, Rick. Oftentimes, so the way that grounding is used in CRIM is it's used as a skill. In mindfulness, which is very, has lots of benefits, is very useful. Highly recommend mindfulness practices as well. But oftentimes, there are ways that we use the word grounding. You say like, "Are you grounded?" Right? So it's a different terminology when utilizing the word grounding. People might go, "Oh, do a grounding exercise," but they're not necessarily referring to CRIM. Right? So CRIM, the skill of grounding, is noticing the support you are receiving from an object, the earth, the wall, whatever you are touching. Whereas a grounding exercise, let's say mindfulness, might be a practice. Maybe it's even like a yoga practice, right? It could be a mindfulness practice that directs you to do certain things, right? You can then be grounded, but the practice of grounding in CRIM is its own practice of itself. So it's a little complicated because it's different. Like it's using the same word for something that we already have a concept for, but it's just this one skill. Want to add to that?
Well, I was just going to go back to his question to clarify. Grounding is a physical activity that you're purposely doing and noticing. So it could be in noticing your feet on the floor and finding that grounding, or it could be purposely putting yourself in a ice bath. That is a grounding. Physiological sigh is a ground, like a sense of grounding, because it's a physical conscious exercise. Gesturing is something different. It could be conscious or unconscious, but it is a movement that you're doing to self-soothe.
Yeah.
It's nuanced into unconscious.
I'll add, like, so when you do in CRIM, when you're doing a grounding exercise, right, it is this particular skill. Again, you're doing tracking, you're noticing yourself as you're sitting, you're noticing the back of your chair supporting you, you're noticing where your thighs are touching it, you're noticing your feet on the ground, you're walking, you're noticing the feet hitting the ground. You can do other things to become grounded, right? Maybe an ice bath is grounding for you, but it's that's great. But when it comes to CRIM, it is a different, like this is a skill in which you are utilizing the support of the ground, the chair, etc., and noticing that to support your nervous system. Amanda, do you have a question? Yeah. The terminology. Yep. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot for sure. Which, yes. Yeah. Add tracking to it, and you are widening your resilience zone and getting yourself back in your nervous system. Which actually, okay, it does lead me actually to our last skill, because really our last skill is called shift and stay. So once as well, we practice CRIM skills, right? Once we also, the idea of tracking, right, is really the foundation of CRIM. It's noticing those sensations. It's becoming like truly, it's understanding and reading our bodies and what is happening inside of our bodies. We do a lot outside of our bodies, right? But it's noticing what's happening inside. Again, I always go back for me personally, loosening of muscles, right? Slower heart rate, deeper breaths, smile on my face, right? That muscle tension. But skill 6, shift and stay, really it goes, you are going to notice what's happening in your body. It's using the skill of tracking to be able to go, oh, something is off. I'm now going to choose a skill, practice the skill, but then stay in it, right? And so you might think, well, isn't that what you're doing with resourcing? Well, actually with resourcing, you are practicing resourcing, right, to get there. So choosing the ability to go, I am going to track what's happening in my body. I'm going to notice what's happening. I am now going to recognize that I am starting to get in my low zone. I'm now going to choose a skill. I'm going to practice, but I'm not just going to practice it to go, okay, I took a deep breath. I'm going to stay in that space. I'm not going to go back, right? I'm not going to go a little bit. I'm going to stay in this other space. And so really it is though capturing this, I'm now going to put it all together, right? It's not just going, it's being able to move even from also unpleasant sensation to pleasant sensation. Because sometimes when we practice skills, you might notice an unpleasant sensation, right? When doing grounding exercise, you might notice that actually sitting in these chairs for an hour and a half is really uncomfortable, right? And so one of the things, if you do a shift and stay, you start tracking and notice, gosh, my lower back is really bothering me, right? And so then as you then practice a grounding exercise, the shift and stay is literally noticing, yes, I might have discomfort here. Where on your body do you have a pleasant sensation? Move there, right? If you notice your lower back is bothering you, but you notice your thighs touching the chair, actually is a really nice pressure, right? Your muscles are loose, the pressure is warm. You're going to shift your attention there and you're going to stay, right? It's fascinating. I've had friends who sometimes have chronic shoulder pain and like have woken up in the middle of the night with shoulder pain, and she has utilized and practiced Krim skills to move her focus to a pleasant spot in her body so that while she could go and get a leave to support herself, right, she's able to though shift where her focus is in her body to also experience less physical pain in that moment. And so it is this tracking what's occurring inside your body and going, I'm going to shift where that sensations are, where I'm noticing. While you're doing that, it's also practicing a skill, and you're going to stay in that pleasant and neutral sensation. So we are at quick, transparent facilitation. We're at 11:40. What do we want to do?
Well, we're going to move right into wellness.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And so moving into wellness, it is Mental Health Month.
Perfect.
And this is the last week of Mental Health Month as we've talked all month about mental health practices. And just to recap, we did a mental health general talk with our podcast, and then we invited Peyton. And those of you who are with us, she talked about the family model of your isolated or your exile self, fireman self, control self, which was really an interesting talk. And then now moving into more of the part 2 Krim skills, but now moving into more practical wellness skills and really learning to take some of these Krim skills and practice them, but then add them to our wellness kind of bank, right? So first I want to talk about wellness, because wellness a lot of times is thought of as I eat healthy, I exercise, and I take my supplements, right? And I have my iron pills at night that I take, and I drink water, right? And as long as I got those 5 things in play, then I have wellness. And I would have to say that there's a lot more to wellness. Those things all matter, but I have met very, very healthy people, triathletes, exercise fanatics, people that are very healthy, take their vitamins, take their iron at night, they sleep well, and they eat their veggies, and they're miserable. Right? They're miserable people. I've also met very successful people. They got all these things dialed in and are extremely lonely. Right? So just because you have certain things dialed in and that's what you call wellness doesn't mean that you're actually engaged in wellness. Right? So you cannot be doing certain things and have a ethos of wellness. You can. I would say that productive people are exhausted. People that are very successful at work are completely miserable, and those that eat their veggies wish that they could eat ice cream, right? So I've met a lot of people like that, and it comes down to this: are we feeling necessarily disconnected? right? Are we feeling disconnected from life, ourselves, the people around us? Because relationships truly do add wellness to our lives. And I know someone right now that she believes her calling in life is to care for people. She loves caring for people. And yes, she goes walking and she eats her veggies and she takes her vitamins. And she's not the fittest person on the planet. And she loves life and she has a lot of joy. A lot of joy. She's one of the happiest people that I know, right? Because she's engaged in her purpose, she's engaged in her calling, she's engaged in these relationships. So I would say that wellness is being fully present in life. Wellness is actually being fully present. And if you've ever taken a yoga class, they're doing things in yoga to try to help us to be fully present in the moment, right? And to be present in the there, you are right there. So notice your breath, feel your butt on the floor, notice your surroundings, visualize this. So they're constantly working through trying to be present because wellness, presence, is number one in wellness, and it's actually essential for wellness. So this is why CRIM is really important to wellness, because CRIM helps us to be in the present. So all of these skills, your tracking, resourcing, grounding, gesturing, help now skills, and shift and stay help us to be in the now versus in the past or the future, or the worry that we're experiencing, or the stress that we're enduring. So our lives, first and foremost, with wellness, our lives don't happen in the past, and our lives don't happen in the future. Our lives happen in the present. So right now you're sitting in this room, you're listening to this presentation, you're right here. But I guarantee you at some point in this last hour and 15 minutes, you thought about what you need to do in the rest of the day, and you worried about something that happened in the past of how you're going to fix it. It's very easy to do that. And so that's why it's so hard to be in the present, because we are suffering in the other two places. And when we suffer in the other two places, that's illness. That's not wellness. That's illness. So the past and the future, that's where our mind spends a lot of our time. That's where our mind spends a lot of our worry and a lot of our regret and guilt and all these things. And many of us live in one of two places, right? So the one of two places, you might live in the past too far, and you might live in the future too far. And both of those are not the now, and both of those don't speak wellness. So wellness, we can, in illness, we replay conversations, we live in a lot of shame, we live in a lot of guilt, wish I coulda, woulda, shoulda type of things. We carry wounds forward, right? And that's our past. I talked a little bit about the narratives. Let me repeat something that I said before. One of the things that I've learned very recently is our brains are interpreters also, not just observers. So our brains observe something, right? This gentleman here has Voodoo Donuts on his shirt, right? And when I think about Voodoo Donuts, I think about certain donuts that they have at Voodoo Donuts, and it makes me laugh, right? Is that Voodoo Donuts or is that Voodoo something else? Oh, New Orleans. Okay. Okay. My interpretation of his shirt is Voodoo Donuts, and I think about donuts, right? So my brain interpreted that shirt to something else. I didn't just observe that it was a black shirt that said voodoo. That could have been voodoo, like the spiritual practice of voodoo, right? It could be anything. And it turned out to be New Orleans, and I was wrong about the shirt, right? My brain carries that narrative forward, and I develop that narrative in my life. So our brains shape narratives. Those narratives are based on the past and the future, mostly not in the now. And this is where we can slip into mental illness, This is where we can get too anxious or depressed in our lives, where our narratives are built too far in the future. Our narratives are built too far in the past. So, my narratives, I really struggled with relationships in my 20s because I had an abandonment narrative that carried too far into my now, right? So I developed a narrative of I wasn't worth loving, I wasn't wanted, I wasn't all these things. And so therefore I couldn't have this now relationship that was happening right in front of me. It's very difficult for me. I had to process through a lot. So we can worry, or we can live too far in the past. I would say that our goal in wellness is connection and presence. So, presence in this connection, right? You've never done anything to me that's really hurt my feelings. You can, I'm sure. You're very capable, right? I'm sure you're very capable. But if I live too far in the fear of this relationship, I'm going to end up doing something that's going to hurt you. I'm going to live out that prophecy, right, in our relationship. So that's because my life is not calm about who I am. I'm not connected and I'm not present in relationships that are happening around. That's what wellness is all about. Wellness is engaging in the practice of relationship, community, and engagement, connecting in the present, right at the moment, right now. So I would say that our resilient zone, how it connects to wellness, is our resilient zone is the wellness of connection and presence in the current situation that we're in. I know in the future, I don't know what's going to happen. I know in the past what I've done. I know in the future, but the now, what I can know now is I can be um, well with my soul. When you hear it is well with my soul, right? That is current. That is the very current. Um, our bodies age. My body's not the same as 22. Newsflash, right? Our bodies are not the same. If I gauged my wellness only on my physical ability, I am sick today, right? Compared to what I was at 22. And so that can't be that can't be what we are regulating our wellness off of. So connecting to others, connecting to reality, connecting to ourselves in the now is the definition or the practice of wellness. There are three things that I want to we have tracking, we have resourcing, we have grounding, right? I sat before a neurologist and she said, this was very interesting. Most of our mental illnesses, like not mentally ill diagnosed depression, clinical bipolar, clinical schizophrenia, borderline. We're not talking about that. We're talking about just our everyday, I'm down, I'm up, I'm stressed, I'm not, I'm angry, I'm happy, I'm miserable, I'm struggling, I'm okay. You know, the daily emotions that we have. A neurologist told me once, just a handful of years ago, that most of those emotions are regulated by three things: sleep, food, and movement. And she said those three things in human beings are non-negotiable things: sleep, food, and movement. Could you imagine our lives? And I'm not talking about the clinical diagnoses. I'm talking about us in the spectrum of normalcy, right, in our mental health. If we could increase our lives by 10% by creating the non-negotiable of getting good sleep, the non-negotiable of eating healthy, and the non-negotiable of movement. If we could actually practice that, how much healthier would we be? How much healthier spiritually would we be? How much healthier emotionally would we be? Physically, of course, would we be? And just connecting socially would we be? How much more wellness would we have? So there's lots of studies on sleep. There's lots of studies. If you're saying I'll sleep when I'm dead, you are not well, right? Just to give you that. Okay, that's a freebie. You're not well if you're saying I'll sleep when I'm dead. If you're eating at the last minute at night at 10 o'clock because you missed all your meals through the day, probably didn't function well through the day. That's another freebie, right? If we're not moving, walking, doesn't take a gym membership and you don't have to go lift weights, how about just go for a walk after dinner, right? Just something movement. If we're not doing that, that's another freebie. Probably not well. So sleep, food, and movement are non-negotiables when it comes to this. How our brain observes and interprets and creates narratives that develop reaction and action in our lives. How our brain creates narratives based on observation and interpretation that produces reaction and action in our lives. If you could change a few things, wouldn't you like to react and act a little bit better? Right? And that's wellness. And every person that I've had sitting here, whether it be a counselor from a year ago, whether it be a neurologist that I sat down with, whether it be a psychiatrist that I know, all those people have said wellness is based on very few things that we're not doing as a society. We're not engaged in these things. So how much healthier could we be if we engage? Bethany, close us out with yours.
All right. Shake, let's get this up. So I'm going to just quickly draw us back to, as we are here, resonate, and here for is bringing us back to faith, right? And I know everyone, we all have a faith, right? And this all looks different. Everyone's in different journeys in their faith and in their walk. But one thing that I love about pulling this back is I think of personally, growing up, I learned a lot of Bible verses, right? I did kids' church, I did Sunday school, I did all that. But the times that I personally really struggled, actually, the third verse, Philippians 4:8. Anyone else memorize that? I don't know if I can tell it to you now, but there are times in my life when I really had to figure out, as Kevin was even saying, right, those false narratives. What is true, right? What is good? What is real, right? What is loving? And I think when we pull back to this faith component and we look at skills of Crim, one thing that I love is that whether it's drawing attention and being intentional with a verse that we read, also add tracking, right? And then you can help support your nervous system a little bit. Think about people in your life who, when you think of someone of faith that you just admire, right? That can become a resource, right? Because a resource it can be a person, it could be a thing, it could be real, it could be imagined, it could be words. But one thing that Crim is also, Elaine is known for saying, she loves to go, what else is true? Right? And as we focus and shift this focus to not going, what else is negative, right? What else could possibly go wrong? Instead, as we chase the resilience, right? There's also so many things about that you're like, oh, wow, that's a lot of Jesus, actually, right? You chase what's loving, right? You trace what's pure, what's right, what's lovely. And as we focus on those things, right, we notice ourselves as well being in a resilient zone, right? Add tracking to that, widen your resilient zone. And so I just have these three verses up here because I think as we think about a resource and how for some people faith is a resource, right? Maybe you kneel when you pray. Maybe you put your hands together. Maybe you put your hand on your heart. Maybe you hold someone else's hand, right? But if you take an extra moment and add tracking to that, you're going to notice as well your nervous system is going to become balanced and aligned, right? It brings that calm, that sense of overwhelming peace. It's also our vagus nerve helping us out. They sometimes call that the soul nerve, which I think is fascinating. But again, it's coming back into our resilient zone. It's becoming balanced in our nervous system. And so to close at your table, and then if you would, Jake, just have the iChill app. There is an app. If you would like to utilize the skills, it walks you through every skill. It's free, highly recommend it. But one thing I would love at the table is if you would like to just take a moment to close, and whether it's sharing a verse, a person in your life, again, it doesn't have to even be related to necessarily faith or church, but someone that you know has been a resource for you, maybe a verse that's been a resource for you, a place that has spiritual significance for you. Take a moment to share that at your table, track the sensations, and we're done. So thank you, friends. Please take a moment, though, at your tables to share.
And after that, we're going to be done. We're just going to move into our close and be done. But if you would